Hi guys, it's Troy at the Full Setup here, back for another video today, and today I want to talk about what is the best budget graphics card that you can buy in 2016. Now we are any minute, well not any minute, within the next 60 days we do expect to have the GTX 1050 come out, which I do think is going to be the best budget card if it fits within the price range that I'll talk about in a minute, and I am going to benchmark that against the winner of this graphics card battle off, showdown, whatever today. So yeah, graphics cards. Now it's been an absolutely fantastic start to the year. We had the 1080 and 1070, which are just absolute, you know, they're just incredible, aren't they? But they're super expensive. Then we had the mainstream cards come out, so with the RX 480, followed by the RX 470, and we had the GTX 1060, which is now available in a 3GB version as well, bringing the price down. These are mainstream graphics cards, and there's been a lot of talk about them on my channel at the moment, but a lot of people still ask me, they're like, Troy, I really want that card, but I just can't afford it. What do you recommend for a budget price? So let's talk about a budget price. To me, for a budget or entry-level graphics card, I always see this sort of quite a close price range between about £100 and £130. Now, it's not to say that graphics cards under £100 aren't good. It's just that those graphics cards are really just for playing older titles on first-person shooters, if you drop the settings right down, and esports games. What you get between 130 is you just be able to play it at higher settings. You can sort of 1080p, you can do ultra on your esports, you can knock the settings up when you go online on a first person shooter. You might not be able to on the campaign, but you can knock those settings up. The other thing as well that they perform better than sub £100 graphics cards is for your more open world games. Games like Far Cry and Assassin's Creed that are like really intensive, GPU intensive games. You will have to play them on medium settings, but you will get a respectable frame rate. So what cards are available in this price range? Now, there's not really a lot on offer. We've got the latest card, which is a 2016 graphics card, so we'll talk about that, and that is the RX 460, available in 2GB or 4GB versions. You can pick the 4GB up for about £130, and that will be sort of, you know, got nice cooler on it and stuff, and that's based on the Polaris 11 technology, chipset. But the thing is with that graphics card, I was expecting it to be a lot better than it is. It's not very good at all. Again, perfect for esports games, first-person shooters, and of course Doom with Vulkan support and Hitman, it runs really well. So maybe we'll see that graphics card come into its own later in the year or next year when we have more support for these games. But really, it's not really much of an improvement over the R9 370. I really expected this card to at least give us 380 performance, even a little bit more for that price. So what else can we get for the price range? The other graphics card you can get is a GTX 950, which is a graphics card from 2015, and that card is pretty good. Like, it runs really well. They overclock like a champion. You can pick up an Asus Strix for about £130, a Strix 950. When you overclock that, you will be running almost at 960 level performance. You'll play almost online shooters. On my 950, I was quite getting respectable frames, playing Battlefront on high to ultra, various shooters, all the esports are good. And then again with these sort of Far Cries, Assassin's Creed, we'll have to play it on medium settings at 1080p, but it runs. Do you know what I mean? It's not really drops in frame rates. But the thing is with both of those graphics cards, that's not good enough. We want 1080p, ultra or high settings. That's what we want. So what else can you buy for that price range? Well, not really a lot. All the R9 380s that were going cheap a couple of months ago, since the RX 480 have come out, they're now sold. So the R9 380s are actually quite expensive. So we're not going to buy that graphics card. So I decided the best thing to do is to dip into the second-hand market. So I originally looked at a 964GB. They were sort of in price range, but I thought I want a bit more power than that. I've got a 960. It's not really much of an upgrade over a 950. So what can I get? So I decided to look into the second-hand market, and the graphics card that I ended up getting is a graphics card from 2013. Say what? Yeah, from 2013, and it's better than both of these cards. And the card that I picked up was an EVGA GTX 780 Superclock ACX. Now I won this on eBay for £115. On buy it now price, they go for about £150. If you bid, you will win one for under £130. You do take a risk, but this graphics card is still awesome. So let's get into the specifications of the card. Now it's running on the Kepler architecture. It's got 2,304 CUDA cores, but just to take that into account, not all CUDA cores are the same, so it might sound massive, but that's still good. It's got a base clock of 962 megahertz and a boost to 1020, and that's the factory overclock. It's got 3 gigabytes of GDDR5 that runs at 6 gigabytes per second on a 384-bit bus, giving an effective 288 gigabytes memory bandwidth. It's also got DVI-D, HDMI, and DisplayPort. But there's 2 things that you really need to take into account with this, and the 2 things are numero uno. Basically, this card's massive. Like it's 266 millimeters in length, so you're gonna need a big enough case. If you've got to buy a bigger case, don't. Save the money, put it towards it, buy a 1060. Next thing, power supply. If you're not rocking at least a good 500 watt power supply, I'm not talking about £100 power supply, at least, you know, £40–50 power supply. That's going to be the minimum that you need for this. EVGA say that you need a 600 watt power supply. You do not. Basically, on my test bench, 500 watt EVGA power supply was the first thing I plugged into it. i5 4690K, overclocked at 4.5 gigahertz. I haven't overclocked the graphics card. I was drawing between 375 and 425 watts. But if you do need to buy a new power supply to afford to buy this graphics card, again, don't buy a 1060. So let's benchmark it. Before I run the benchmarks, I just want a quickly overrun of the system. Now, I've decided not to use my 880K, even though we're talking about entry-level graphics cards, just because it bottlenecks in a couple of games. So I've used my i5 4690K, as mentioned earlier, overclocked to 4.5 gigahertz at 1.2 volts. I've got a Corsair H55 cooler on it with dual push-pull SP120 fans. I'm running an Asus Z97AR motherboard with 16 gigabytes of DDR3 HyperX memory at 1800 megahertz. I've also got a HyperX 240 gigabyte SSD, and I've got a Western Digital 1 terabyte black. And for the power supply, I'm actually on this because it's just gone into that system. I'm using my Gigabyte 600B7H, something like that. I don't know, Gigabyte power supply. One thing I need to mention before this is I no longer own my 950. I don't own an RX 460. I was going to buy both graphics cards for this video, but I'm holding my money for a 1050 because I want to buy that as soon as it comes out on launch. So what I've done is I've not taken any of these benchmarks from YouTube videos. All these benchmarks have been taken from the likes of Guru 3D, Gaming Nexus. I haven't, you know, been more against Team Green, you know, pushed their better frames. You know, I've always picked the highest frames because I know we've got 2 NVIDIA cards against an AMD card, and I'm just going to show you the average frame rates of all of them. So let's run the benchmarks.
Stormtroopers have halted the locking signal. Our bombers... Whoa! Get out of the way! Tracking enemy units moving in on both sides. No.
Finish, chum!
So there's the benchmarks, and as you can see, the GTX 780 still performs like an absolute champion. It pretty much will run any game at high to ultra settings, and it will still maintain a perfect, respectable 60 frames per second plus in 1080p gaming. Something that the RX 460 and the GTX 950 really can't put a claim to. So if you do have a decent power supply and you're happy to take the risk on buying a second-hand product and you need a budget or entry-level graphics card, I would highly recommend that you go out and you purchase a second-hand GTX 780. That's all from me today. As I said, in a month or so, I will be back with a GTX 1050 and I will show down those cards, and there'll be all my own benchmarks against the 780 to see who is the champion of best budget graphics card 2016. If you like the video, tell me why. If you don't like it, tell me why, and I'll see you guys really soon.